On September 14, 2025, a telescope array in Chile recorded an image that would send shivers through every scientific agency on Earth. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary interstellar comet, glowing faintly as it crept closer to the orbit of Mars. But within hours, comparisons with earlier photographs revealed something extraordinary. 3I Atlas was changing shape. Not gradually, not as a natural body shedding dust or ice would, but abruptly, as if it were rearranging itself. The hook strikes. Comets do not alter geometry overnight. They do not pulse with light in rhythmic intervals. They do not bend their tails against the solar wind, resisting forces billions of times stronger than themselves. And yet, Atlas was doing all of this, calmly, silently, as though it did not belong to the same universe as the comets and asteroids we thought we understood. Here lies the conflict. For years, interstellar objects were little more than curiosities. Oumuamua, the first of its kind, sparked debate when it entered our system in 2017, its elongated shape unlike anything seen before. 2 years later came Borisov, behaving like a typical comet, but carrying with it the weight of alien origins. Both were fleeting visitors racing through the solar system, destined never to return. But Atlas is different. Its trajectory is slower, its presence heavier, its behavior stranger. The closer it drifts toward Mars, the less it resembles anything born of dust and stone. Scientists scramble to explain what they see. Some insist the irregular flashes are simple outgassing events, jets of sublimating ice caught in unusual light. Others argue the tail's bizarre curve is an artifact of perspective, a trick of the instruments. But every new image challenges these excuses. Structures begin to emerge in the coma, lines that look less like turbulence and more like design. Patterns, symmetry, hints of intent. And here comes the mini-climax. Humanity stares into the void and wonders if, for the first time in history, we are not observing nature, but encountering presence. Not random debris wandering through our star's domain, but something that carries with it the weight of origin and purpose. This thought unsettles because it forces us to admit what we are not ready to face. That life, or something beyond life, might not only exist elsewhere, but might already be watching us, gliding silently past Mars, cloaked in the disguise of a comet. If so, then the story of Atlas is not simply astronomy. It is the first act of a drama older than our species. And yet, there is wonder here too. To live in this moment is to witness the cracking of certainty. To look up at the night sky, knowing that among the countless stars and galaxies, something alien is drawing nearer, reshaping itself under our gaze, daring us to name it. So perhaps the question is not whether Atlas is a comet, a machine, or a living being. The question is whether humanity is ready to see what it truly is as it approaches Mars, glowing brighter, looking less like ice and more like intention. If Earth is the anxious observer, then Mars has become the stage. It is the first world to stand directly in Atlas's path, the nearest body between our fragile blue home and the interstellar visitor that now glows brighter than any comet we have ever seen. And so the red planet, silent for billions of years, patient beneath dust and storms, suddenly finds itself at the center of a cosmic drama. The hook strikes. The first detailed images of Atlas against Mars came not from Earth, but from orbiters circling the planet. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, equipped with instruments designed to map dust storms and geological features, caught faint but undeniable distortions in the sky. Instead of the expected pale streak of a comet's tail, there were arcs, curves, even angular shadows etched against the void. They were not random. They seemed arranged as though geometry itself had leaked into the heavens. Here lies the conflict. Mars is not a passive witness. Its thin atmosphere, fragile and easily disturbed, begins to respond. Sensitive instruments aboard rovers register spikes in radiation far above predicted levels. Auroras, phenomena rare on Mars given its weak magnetic field, begin to shimmer faintly across polar skies, glowing not with Earth's familiar green, but with surreal shades of violet and crimson. Scientists on Earth hesitate. Are these natural responses to a comet's presence, or is Atlas exerting influence more direct, more deliberate? From the perspective of Earth-based telescopes, Atlas seems larger every night. Its coma swells until it nearly dwarfs the disk of Mars itself. For the first time, the red planet appears small, diminished, like a lantern overshadowed by a spreading flame. The effect unsettles astronomers, not because of beauty, but because of implication. Atlas is no passing stone. It is an event. And here comes the mini-climax. Images stitched together from different orbiters reveal a startling detail. Within the glow of Atlas's coma, filaments stretch and twist, forming structures that look disturbingly like lines, parallel, intersecting, reminiscent of scaffolding or veins. Some dismiss them as tricks of light, illusions formed by plasma. Others whisper that Mars may be reflecting more than light. It may be mirroring Atlas itself, caught in a resonance no model can explain. This thought unsettles because it makes Mars more than a backdrop. It becomes a lens, a screen on which the strangeness of Atlas is projected for humanity to see. For decades, we have looked at Mars as a dead world, a candidate for colonization, a planet to conquer. Now, it looks back at us wrapped in violet auroras, its skies painted by an interstellar presence, as though reminding us that even the lifeless can witness history. And yet, there is awe, too. For the first time, humanity sees Mars not as an abandoned desert, but as part of a larger conversation, a planet caught between us and the unknown. The same world that carried Viking, curiosity, perseverance, now carries our gaze into a mystery greater than any rover could dig from its soil. So perhaps the question is not whether Atlas is changing Mars, but whether Mars is changing us, forcing us to see the red planet not as an empty step toward colonization, but as the first canvas on which the universe is painting the truth of its alien presence. The first thing astronomers noticed was the tail. Every comet has one, a stream of gas and dust drawn out by the solar wind, always pointing away from the sun. It is predictable, mechanical, the result of physics older than life itself. But Atlas refused to obey. Its tail bent at angles that seemed to defy the star's pull. At times, it appeared to split in two, branching like a forked path. And on certain nights, under the gaze of sensitive telescopes, the tail curved toward the sun itself, as though resisting the wind instead of yielding to it. The hook strikes. Comets do not resist stars. They are dust and ice, fragile travelers broken apart by heat and radiation. Yet Atlas's tail behaved like a willful current, flowing not with the rules, but against them. It was as if the object were not being pushed, but steering. Here lies the conflict. Some scientists rush to explain it with elaborate models, jets of sublimating ice firing off in just the right sequence, creating the illusion of control. Others pointed to magnetic interactions, rare but not impossible. But the explanations cracked under scrutiny. The angles were too sharp, the timing too precise. Even among the most cautious voices, doubt grew. What we were watching might not be random. Then came the coma. Instead of a chaotic cloud, Atlas's glow seemed structured. Photographs revealed filaments, weaving and reconnecting like threads in an invisible fabric. At high resolution, some filaments bent at 90-degree angles, geometry not expected in plasma clouds. To the human eye, the patterns looked eerily familiar, resembling architecture or circuitry, more than turbulence. And here comes the mini-climax. One sequence of images from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter captured Atlas's coma, flickering in intervals. At first dismissed as equipment error, further analysis revealed the rhythm was real, a pulse. Every 43 seconds, a surge of brightness rippled outward like the beating of a cosmic heart. To call it coincidence strained belief. To call it intent strained imagination. This thought unsettles because it suggests order where none should exist. A comet should be chaos, a wandering relic of dust. Yet Atlas shows rhythm, structure, even defiance. It forces us to confront a possibility we avoid, that not everything in the universe is indifferent. Some things may respond, some things may act. And yet, there is awe, too. For millennia, humans have looked at the sky and seen signs, gods, spirits, omens written in light. Now, for the first time, we may be witnessing something that justifies those instincts. Not superstition, but resonance. Not myth, but mystery alive before our eyes. So perhaps the question is not how Atlas bends its tail or weaves its coma. The question is whether in those patterns, in those pulses, we are watching the first movements of something not born of nature as we know it. Something alien, approaching Mars, daring us to see. The closer Atlas drifted toward Mars, the more its light betrayed something unnerving. Ordinary comets glow pale, their colors determined by the gases boiling off their icy shells. Faint greens from diatomic carbon, blues from ionized carbon monoxide, reds from dust scattering sunlight. Predictable chemistry, beautiful but simple. Atlas refused to conform. Its glow shifted like a mood, cycling through palettes as though directed by an unseen hand. The hook strikes. One night, its coma burned a deep sapphire blue, shimmering as if drenched in liquid light. Days later, telescopes recorded a violent shift into crimson, so intense that even amateur stargazers saw the change from their backyards. And then came the strangest phase, a soft emerald glow that pulsed, dimming and brightening not randomly, but in waves. To observers on Earth, it looked less like gas expanding in space and more like breath, drawn and released in silence. Here lies the conflict. Plasma does not breathe. Gas does not decide when to shimmer and when to fade. And yet, Atlas displayed rhythms that mirrored life more than physics. When solar wind struck, the comet did not scatter chaotically as expected. Instead, its glow concentrated, strengthened, almost as if feeding from the storm. To some, this suggested resonance with the sun's magnetic fields. To others, it looked like adaptation, the deliberate use of energy. Data from orbiters around Mars confirmed the strangeness. Spectral readings revealed elements rarely found in comets. Not just water and carbon, but heavy metals arranged in unusual ratios. The glow was not merely emission. It carried sharp spikes at narrow frequencies, like signals hidden within light. Researchers hesitated to publish Fearing ridicule, yet privately admitted, the spectral profile looked more like a transmission than a reflection. And here comes the mini-climax. The coma itself began to form gradients, patches of color blending into one another like tissues in a living body. Images showed veined structures, glowing more brightly where the colors met. The effect was unsettlingly biological. It no longer resembled dust or gas, but skin, luminous, shifting, alive. This thought unsettles because it forces a collision between categories we have always kept separate. In our minds, the universe divides neatly: the living and the inert, the organism and the stone. But Atlas sits at the boundary, glowing like plasma, moving like intention, blurring the lines we once thought were unshakable. If it is alive, it is not life as we know it. If it is not alive, it mimics life with frightening precision. And yet, there is awe too. To look at Atlas now is to see not a comet, but a phenomenon, a reminder that life, or the appearance of life, might not be confined to Earth or even to biology. Perhaps the cosmos carries its own forms of breath and pulse, written not in blood, but in plasma and light. So perhaps the question is not whether Atlas is alive, but whether humanity is ready to expand its definition of life, to accept that something alien may not greet us with words, but with colors pulsing in the void, a silent rhythm against the black. At first, 3I Atlas seemed to follow the predictable path of any interstellar traveler, a long hyperbolic arc that would bring it past the sun and fling it back into the void. But as weeks passed, the data refused to settle. Observatories from Hawaii to Chile, from Spain to South Africa, reported discrepancies. The comet's trajectory wavered not by margins explainable through error, but by shifts too sharp to ignore. The hook strikes. A comet does not alter its own course. Gravity dictates its path. The sun shapes its curve. The laws of physics write its script with unforgiving precision. Yet Atlas drifted off predictions by tens of thousands of kilometers, then returned as if correcting itself. It was not wandering blindly. It was adjusting. Here lies the conflict. Astronomers searched for explanations. Jets of sublimating ice could, in theory, act as thrusters, pushing the body in subtle ways. This had been suggested to explain the strange acceleration of Oumuamua years before. But with Atlas, the adjustments were too precise, the corrections too consistent. Where a comet should jitter, Atlas glided, shifting in arcs that looked eerily like intention. A joint study between European and American teams attempted to recalibrate the models, incorporating solar wind fluctuations, gravitational pulls from Mars, even hypothetical collisions with dust clouds. None of it fit. Instead of drifting farther from predictions, Atlas seemed to converge, drawing closer to the exact line that brought it past Mars, as though it were aiming. And here comes the mini-climax. A series of images from the European Southern Observatory revealed a pattern even more disturbing. Each time Atlas shifted its trajectory, its coma brightened briefly, pulsing with light, before settling again. The effect looked uncannily like thrust, not chaotic gas jets, but controlled burns, as though some mechanism hidden within the glowing shroud were guiding its path. This thought unsettles because it blurs the line between natural motion and navigation. We are comfortable with stones drifting, with stars pulling, with forces shaping blindly. We are not comfortable with the idea of presence, of a body that chooses where to go. To admit this is to whisper a word humanity has long avoided in astronomy: control. And yet, there is awe too. To imagine Atlas adjusting its course is to glimpse possibility. If it is a vessel, then it carries with it a civilization older than our species, a story written in light years. If it is alive, then it may be the largest organism humanity has ever encountered, steering itself through galaxies as a whale steers through oceans. Either way, its presence redefines the cosmos, from silence into dialogue, from randomness into rhythm. So perhaps the question is not whether Atlas is controlled, but by what? By mechanisms we do not yet recognize, by instincts we cannot imagine, or by forces that make even our definition of control seem small. When Earth's telescope struggled to keep pace with Atlas's strange behavior, another set of instruments began to offer clarity, not from Earth, but from Mars. The rovers Curiosity and Perseverance, along with orbiters like MAVEN and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, were never designed to study interstellar comets. Their purpose was geology, climate, atmosphere. And yet, as Atlas drew closer, their sensors began to register anomalies too precise, too rhythmic to dismiss. The hook strikes. MAVEN's magnetometer, tuned to study Mars's weak magnetic environment, picked up pulses. Not the chaotic bursts expected from solar storms, but narrow-band oscillations repeating at steady intervals. The signature was unlike anything seen in ordinary interactions between solar wind and planetary fields. It carried the mark of coherence, as though the source were engineered or alive. Here lies the conflict. At first, mission controllers dismissed the signals as artifacts, noise caused by Atlas's expanding coma mixing with the sun's activity. But the pulses persisted. Every 37 minutes, without fail, a spike cut through the data, sharp and unmistakable. It was not background chatter, it was pattern. Meanwhile, Perseverance's environmental sensors registered bursts of radiation that arrived in sync with the magnetometer's readings. They were faint, not strong enough to endanger instruments, but unusual in character. Instead of broad-spectrum interference, the bursts were narrow, as if tuned to specific frequencies. To engineers used to static, it looked uncomfortably like transmission. And here comes the mini-climax. A breakthrough came when data from MAVEN and Perseverance were compared. The signals were not random. Cross-analysis revealed alignment between them, as though they were two halves of a single message scattered across different detectors. Together, they formed a repeating rhythm. 3 short pulses, 1 long, 3 short again. To some, it was coincidence. To others, it was the first sign of intention ever recorded beyond Earth. This thought unsettles because it challenges one of our last illusions, that silence defines the cosmos. We have pointed radios into the stars for a century, waiting for a voice, assuming that if someone wished to speak, they would send a message we could not mistake. Yet here, in the faint rhythm of a comet's glow, in the pulses that ripple across Mars's thin sky, we may already be hearing it. Not a broadcast, but a presence. Not a call, but a heartbeat. And yet, there is awe too. To imagine that Atlas carries with it not just dust and plasma, but pattern, is to realize that the universe may not be indifferent. It may be speaking constantly, not in words, but in rhythms, in pulses, in signatures we have never known how to read. The silence of space may never have been silence at all. So perhaps the question is not whether Atlas is sending signals, but whether humanity is ready to listen, ready to admit that the universe might already be in conversation and that Mars has become the first stage on which we overhear it. For weeks, the official statements from space agencies followed the same pattern: cautious, technical, restrained. Atlas was a comet, albeit an unusual one. Its brightness, its shifting coma, its deviations in trajectory, all were framed as puzzles awaiting explanation. To admit more was to invite chaos. But data does not bend to language forever, and slowly, reluctantly, the language began to change. The hook strikes. On September 28th, the European Space Agency issued an internal memo that leaked within hours. The wording was careful, but unmistakable. At present, the object known as 3I Atlas demonstrates phenomena inconsistent with natural cometary behavior. While we cannot exclude exotic natural processes, the possibility of non-natural origin must be considered in ongoing analysis. It was the first time in recorded history that an official scientific body allowed the word non-natural into a public description of a celestial body. Here lies the conflict. NASA followed with its own statement days later, still cautious but edged with unease. Unexplained plasma structuring, it read, trajectory corrections inconsistent with sublimation models. The word seemed sterile, but between the lines lay fear. No one wanted to say the word artificial. No one wanted to admit what the data implied. But silence, too, became untenable. The rhythms, the pulses, the geometric structures inside the coma. Each night they grew harder to deny. The media pounced. Headlines declared Atlas a possible alien spacecraft, a phrase scientists loathed but could no longer stamp out. Interviews filled screens where astronomers danced around their own discomfort. "We don't know what we're looking at," became the refrain, repeated with voices that trembled between awe and dread. And here comes the mini-climax. The tipping point arrived when a coalition of observatories published synchronized datasets showing that Atlas's periodic pulses aligned across instruments thousands of kilometers apart. The signals were not equipment error. They were real, consistent, measurable. In a press conference streamed worldwide, one researcher finally broke the unspoken rule. "If this were discovered in orbit around Earth," she said, "we would not hesitate to call it a probe." The room fell silent. The word had been spoken. This thought unsettles because it pushes humanity toward the precipice of recognition. To call Atlas a probe is to admit intention. To admit intention is to accept presence. And to accept presence is to confront the possibility that, for the first time in history, we are not the observers, but the observed. The cosmos, once imagined as indifferent, begins to look back. And yet, there is awe, too. For centuries, humans have wondered if we were alone. Now, across the vastness of space, something answers not with a voice, but with geometry, with rhythm, with movement that defies chance. It may not speak our language, but it speaks nonetheless. So perhaps the question is not whether Atlas is a comet or a vessel. The question is whether humanity is ready to face what it means if it is the latter. If we are watching the approach not of a rock, but of a presence, one that has chosen Mars as its first theater. For as long as humans have lifted their eyes to the sky, the heavens have been a canvas of meaning. Long before telescopes, before satellites, before even writing, the night sky told stories. Constellations became gods, planets became omens, comets became messengers of doom or change. It was never just light. It was always a mirror for our fears and hopes. The hook strikes. In 1066, the appearance of Halley's Comet was recorded as a portent of conquest, painted into the Bayeux tapestry alongside kings and battles. In 1910, the same comet sparked panic when newspapers claimed its tail contained deadly gas that would sweep across Earth. Even in the modern age, with science firmly in command, comets have never been free of myth. They arrive, they glow, and we interpret. We cannot help it. Here lies the conflict. Atlas fits this ancient pattern, but it breaks it too. Where past comets could be folded back into the comfort of physics, Atlas resists every attempt at reassurance. It shifts its path. It pulses with rhythm. It bends its tail in ways no dust should bend. In ancient times, this would have been taken as a sign from gods. Today, it is something stranger, a sign from nowhere or everywhere, something that feels intentional but alien, not divine, not demonic, but other. Across cultures, interpretations already begin to bloom. Some see Atlas as a herald of catastrophe, a cosmic messenger warning of collapse. Others cast it as the long-awaited confirmation of life beyond Earth, a visitation not from heaven, but from the stars. For the religious, it is a test of faith. For the secular, a test of imagination. In both, the weight of meaning grows heavier every day. And here comes the mini-climax. Historians point out that never before has a celestial object been tracked in such detail by the entire world at once. Unlike Halley or Borisov, Atlas is not a fleeting streak in the sky. It is broadcast in high definition, every image shared instantly, every anomaly dissected in real time. The whole planet watches together. Billions of eyes see the same pulse, the same strange glow. For the first time, the sky is not a private mystery, but a shared experience, a collective omen. This thought unsettles because it makes clear that Atlas is not just a scientific problem, it is a cultural one, a psychological one. Humanity does not meet the unknown with cold objectivity. We meet it with story, with fear, with wonder. And when the unknown begins to resemble intention, the stories grow louder, heavier, more dangerous. And yet, there is awe, too. To witness Atlas is to stand in the same tradition as our ancestors, staring upward, feeling the weight of something vast and incomprehensible. The difference is that, unlike them, we now have instruments, data, models, and yet we are no less unsettled. Perhaps this reveals a truth we rarely admit, that no matter how advanced our science becomes, we are still human, still storytellers in the dark. So perhaps the question is not what Atlas is, but what we will make of it. Will we call it an omen of disaster, a beacon of life, or a mirror of our own fears? In the end, Atlas may not just reveal what lies beyond the stars, but what lies within us, the eternal need to see meaning in the glow of the unknown. For centuries, humanity has asked the same question in countless forms. Are we alone? It echoed through philosophy, religion, science, art. It lingered in the silence between stars. But the question was always safe, because it was always unanswered. It was abstract, speculative, a mirror for our imagination rather than a demand for action. With Atlas, the silence begins to crack. For the first time, the question is no longer philosophical. It is present. The hook strikes. When confronted with the unexplainable, humanity reaches instinctively for language. But language fails here. We have words for comets, for asteroids, for probes, for organisms. Atlas fits none of them. It shifts between categories, slipping away each time we try to name it. It is like trying to hold smoke, only to find that the smoke breathes back. Here lies the conflict. If Atlas is a comet, then physics must bend to fit its behavior. If it is a machine, then we face the reality that someone built it. and that someone is not us. If it is alive, then life is larger, stranger, more ancient than we ever dreamed. Each explanation carries consequences so heavy that none can be accepted without remaking the world. And yet, the object grows closer, indifferent to our debates, forcing the question whether we are ready or not. Philosophers argue that Atlas challenges not only science, but identity. To be human has always meant to be the center of meaning, the storytellers of Earth, the lone voice in the silence of the cosmos. But if Atlas carries presence, machine, organism, or something beyond both, then humanity is no longer singular. We become one among many. The story of existence stretches beyond us, and we must face the humbling truth that we are not the authors of the universe, only characters in a greater script. And here comes the mini-climax. Imagine for a moment that Atlas is not random, but deliberate, not accident, but arrival. The implications are staggering. Contact does not need words or signals. Contact can be presence, orbiting quietly past Mars, reshaping itself under our gaze, forcing us to confront what it means to exist beside something truly alien. The first contact is not a message we receive, but a reality we witness. This thought unsettles because it demands humility. Our science is built on the assumption that the universe is knowable, that with enough instruments and equations, every mystery can be reduced to explanation. But Atlas resists reduction. It shows us geometry where there should be chaos, rhythm where there should be noise, direction where there should be drift. It mocks our categories, not with hostility, but with indifference, as though reminding us that our language is too small for the cosmos. And yet, there is awe too. To face Atlas is to stand on the edge of a frontier older than exploration, older than science, the frontier of wonder. It reminds us that the universe is not only matter, but mystery, not only order, but surprise. Perhaps we have been asking the wrong question all along. The point is not whether we are alone, but whether we are willing to see. So perhaps the question is not what is Atlas, but what does Atlas make of us? For in the glow of its shifting light, in the silence of its pulsing rhythm, humanity sees not just the alien, but the reflection of our own limits. The closer Atlas comes, the more it forces us to reckon with the truth we have long resisted, that the universe is larger, stranger, and more alive than we ever dared to admit. As Atlas closed the gap to Mars, its presence no longer resembled a distant curiosity. It became a looming figure against the velvet black of space, a glow swelling night after night until even small telescopes on Earth could detect its eerie brilliance. What had once been a pale smudge on instruments was now undeniable, an object of scale, of weight, of strangeness. The hook strikes. Photographs revealed that Atlas was shedding its cometary disguise. Where natural comets blur into haze, Atlas grew sharper. Its coma no longer looked like a cloud, but like a shell, smooth in some regions, jagged in others, curving into angles that no turbulence should produce. Observers argued bitterly. Some swore they saw hexagonal structures. Others insisted on triangular shadows. But all agreed the closer it came to Mars, the less it resembled dust and ice. Here lies the conflict. In every past encounter, comets have grown simpler under scrutiny. Their tails could be mapped, their chemistry dissected, their paths plotted with precision. Atlas defied this rule. Clarity did not simplify. Clarity deepened the mystery. The more we saw, the less we understood. Instead of answers, magnification brought new questions. Fractals of anomaly spiraling outward without end. Even more troubling were the patterns. High-resolution images showed ridges across its surface that repeated in intervals too precise for chance. Parallel lines, equidistant gaps, curves that resembled arcs of circles. Natural erosion cannot carve with a ruler's hand. Plasma flows do not draw with compass and arc. Yet Atlas carried these marks openly, as though displaying them. And here comes the mini-climax. One sequence captured by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter showed Atlas shimmering not randomly, but in zones, as if light itself were scanning across its surface. The image, blurred but undeniable, resembled illumination moving along edges, like city lights across continents at night, but alien, patterned, deliberate. This thought unsettles because it forces the human eye into a corner. Once you see design, you cannot unsee it. Perhaps the lines are tricks of shadow. Perhaps the patterns are chaos pretending to be order. But the mind resists dismissal. We are creatures who read meaning into stars, who see constellations in random clusters of light. To stare at Atlas is to fight the instinct that whispers, "This is not chance." And yet, there is awe, too. To witness geometry emerge in the void is to glimpse the possibility that nature itself is not bound by our definitions. Whether machine or organism, Atlas suggests that the universe holds forms we have not yet imagined, shapes that mock our distinction between the natural and the artificial. So perhaps the question is not whether Atlas is alien, but whether our categories of comet, craft, or even life are too small to contain it. The closer it comes to Mars, the clearer it becomes. Atlas is not here to fit our understanding. It is here to expand it. The sun, restless after its long dormancy, unleashed a series of solar flares as Atlas drifted closer to Mars. These storms, violent eruptions of plasma, should have battered the comet into chaos, tearing at its coma, scattering its tail, dimming its glow under the sheer pressure of radiation. Instead, observers saw something that defied expectation. Atlas did not scatter. It strengthened. The hook strikes. When the flare erupted, Earth-based instruments detected a surge in Atlas's brightness almost instantly. Not delayed, not diffused. Immediate. The flare struck, and Atlas pulsed. The next storm repeated the phenomenon. The pattern was unmistakable. What should have been destruction looked like nourishment. It was as if Atlas were feeding on the sun's violence. Here lies the conflict. Plasma physics offers explanations, resonances, alignments, magnetic interactions. But these do not account for precision. Atlas responded with timing too perfect, with intervals too consistent. Every burst of solar fury was met with a ripple from Atlas, as though it were acknowledging, replying, answering in kind. Data from NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory added another layer. In the minutes following each solar flare, Atlas's coma restructured itself, filaments twisting into new configurations, then holding steady until the next eruption. The effect was eerie, like watching an organism twitch and flex in response to stimulus. Natural bodies do not choreograph themselves to the sun's heartbeat. They yield blindly. Atlas seemed to dance. And here comes the mini-climax. In one sequence, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter caught a breathtaking sight. A solar storm exploded outward, filling space with plasma. Atlas, instead of retreating, flared outward in perfect symmetry, creating arcs that mirrored the sun's eruption. The image was almost theatrical. Two titans exchanging gestures across millions of kilometers, one human star and one alien wanderer, locked in silent dialogue. This thought unsettles because it blurs the last refuge of skepticism. It is easy to call structure an illusion, to call rhythm coincidence, but to call response coincidence stretches belief to breaking. Atlas does not only move, it reacts. To call that natural is to bend the very concept of nature until it breaks. And yet, there is awe too. To witness such a dialogue is to feel the universe awaken around us. For the first time, the sun does not act alone in the sky. Something answers it, reflecting its fire with its own. Whether machine or organism, comet or something greater, Atlas has joined the oldest voice in our system, the voice of the star itself. So perhaps the question is not whether Atlas reacts, but whether it understands. If it feeds, then it is alive. If it mirrors, then it is aware. If it responds, then the silence of space may never have been silence at all. And what does that make us, watching from afar? Spectators of a cosmic conversation or participants still too timid to speak? On Mars, silence has always been absolute. Its winds whisper through dust, its thin sky glows faintly, but the planet has been lifeless for billions of years. That silence was broken not by sound, but by numbers. Instruments scattered across its surface began to register disturbances unlike anything in their long, uneventful histories. The hook strikes. Perseverance's seismometer recorded subtle vibrations. Though no tectonic activity exists on Mars to explain them, Curiosity's radiation detector spiked suddenly, rising above background levels, then falling in sharp intervals. MAVEN's instruments reported surges of charged particles sweeping across the planet's upper atmosphere, forming brief curtains of light, auroras unlike any ever seen on the red world. Here lies the conflict. None of these anomalies were random. They aligned with Atlas's pulses. Each time the comet flared, Mars trembled faintly as if struck by an invisible wave. Each time Atlas brightened, instruments registered new bursts of energy, almost rhythmic. The correlation was too exact, too consistent to ignore. It was as though Atlas's presence was reaching across space, brushing against the planet's fragile systems, forcing it to respond. Scientists debated in frustration. Could the comet's plasma tail really stretch so far, interfering directly with Mars's environment? Could resonance with the sun's magnetic field create such effects? Models failed to capture the precision, the tremors, the surges, the auroras. They were not chaotic. They were coordinated. And here comes the mini-climax. A single sequence from Perseverance brought the data into chilling clarity. Its cameras caught the faint violet shimmer of auroras over Jezero Crater, dancing in waves that pulsed in sync with Atlas's intervals. For 3 hours, the rover's logs read like a heartbeat. Flare, response, flare, response. Not background, not noise. A rhythm linking comet and planet like two instruments playing the same unseen score. This thought unsettles because it erodes the illusion that Mars is inert. A world long thought dead suddenly appears animated, its skies flickering, its surface trembling, not of its own will, but in resonance with something alien passing nearby. Mars becomes less a planet and more a canvas, painted upon by Atlas in strokes of energy. And yet, there is awe, too. To imagine Mars responding to the presence of an interstellar body is to see the red planet not as silent stone, but as participant in a cosmic dialogue. Once we dreamed of bringing Mars to life through colonization, terraforming, technology. Instead, it stirs under the touch of something far older, far stranger. So perhaps the question is not what Atlas is doing to Mars, but what Mars is showing to us. For in those violet auroras and trembling vibrations lies a message more profound than any signal, that even silence can be broken, that even dead worlds can answer when the universe speaks. Whether this is warning, invitation, or something beyond our comprehension, the story has only just begun. The world had never been so united in watching the sky, and yet so divided in what it meant. Each new image of Atlas, each new burst of data spilled instantly into the bloodstream of culture. News networks looped the glowing arcs and pulsing filaments. Commentators spoke with voices shaking between awe and fear. Every frame became fuel for competing visions of the future. The hook strikes. In some corners, Atlas was branded a harbinger of catastrophe. Commentators warned of invasion, of doomsday, of an alien weapon disguised as a comet. Social feeds filled with digital artwork depicting Atlas as a fortress, a leviathan, a silent destroyer drawing closer to Mars. Fear became content, and content became certainty. Here lies the conflict. Just as strongly, other voices rose in wonder. Writers, poets, and spiritual leaders spoke of Atlas as a messenger, a cosmic traveler sent not to destroy, but to awaken. Music videos pulsed to its rhythms, art installations mirrored its shifting glow, sermons painted it as a sign that humanity was not abandoned in the void. For every headline of fear, there was an echo of hope. Governments and agencies struggled to keep control of the narrative. Every cautious scientific statement was twisted, magnified, or distorted until it no longer resembled its careful origin. A phrase like non-natural structuring became, in headlines, alien megastructure confirmed. A note about unexplained resonance morphed into proof of alien communication. Truth dissolved into perception, and perception spread faster than fact. And here comes the mini-climax. Atlas entered popular imagination not just as an object, but as a symbol. For some, it embodied humanity's nightmares of being small, vulnerable, exposed to a power beyond comprehension. For others, it embodied the dream that across the void there is company, that the universe is not indifferent, that we are about to take part in a story older than Earth. Atlas had become both angel and demon, mirror and mystery, depending on who gazed at it. This thought unsettles because it reveals how fragile our grasp on meaning truly is. One body drifting past Mars and the planet of storytellers fractures into competing myths. No telescope is powerful enough to silence belief. And when the unknown grows bright in the sky, belief is stronger than data. And yet, there is awe, too. Atlas, whether machine or comet or something beyond, has already altered human culture. It has already reshaped art, prayer, imagination. The object itself may pass or linger, may reveal its nature or remain forever silent. But even now, without a single word, it has changed us. It has drawn us together into argument, into creation, into wonder. It is not only the universe that has grown stranger, it is us. Atlas has already left its mark, not in dust or radiation, but in the minds of billions who look upward and see in it whatever they most fear or most desire. Patterns are the language of the universe. Stars pulse, planets orbit, atoms vibrate, all in rhythms written by laws older than time. But Atlas carried a rhythm that belonged to none of these. It was not the vibration of atoms, nor the heartbeat of stars. It was something else, something new. The hook strikes. Instruments across the globe and in orbit recorded the same anomaly. Atlas's brightness surged not randomly, but in intervals, steady as a clock. Every 43 seconds a pulse rippled outward, faint but unmistakable. Then, 43 seconds later, it came again. It did not drift, did not falter. Hours passed, and the rhythm endured, flawless, unwavering, intentional. Here lies the conflict. No natural comet behaves this way. Gas vents erupt unpredictably, dust plumes scatter chaotically, brightness rises and falls with distance from the sun, not in metronomic certainty. To call this coincidence was to insult mathematics itself. And yet, the alternative was more unsettling. Rhythm implies order. Order implies design. Scientists resisted, but their data betrayed them. NASA's Deep Space Network logged the same rhythm. The European Southern Observatory confirmed it. Even amateur astronomers with sensitive equipment began to notice the subtle flicker. It was not an artifact of machines. It was out there in space itself, broadcasting through light. And here comes the mini-climax. When the rhythm was plotted, its simplicity was disarming. 3 short pulses, 1 long, then 3 short again, repeating endlessly like a beacon. To some, it resembled Morse code. To others, it looked like the oscillations of a living system, a heartbeat amplified across millions of kilometers. Whether signal or biology, the fact remained. Atlas was not silent. It was speaking. This thought unsettles because it leaves no refuge in uncertainty. We can ignore patterns if they falter, dismiss signals if they blur, but Atlas does neither. Its rhythm is perfect, unwavering, almost deliberate in its persistence. It forces us to ask a question no one wants to ask. Who or what keeps the beat? And yet, there is awe too. To imagine that the first message from beyond might not be words but rhythm is strangely fitting. Music, heartbeat, signal, all are rhythm, all are pattern. Perhaps the universe does not speak in language, but in pulse, in repetition, in the simplest code that any mind could hear. Atlas does not need to tell us what it is. Its presence is enough. Each flicker is a reminder that the void may not be empty, that silence may never have been silence at all. And whether machine or organism, comet or vessel, Atlas has already altered the sky forever. It beats, and with each beat, the universe grows less alone. The rhythm of Atlas spread quickly beyond laboratories and observatories. Once scientists confirmed its precision, the question that had lingered unspoken began to rise. If a signal repeats, is it simply nature or is it language? And if it is language, then are we not already in the middle of the first conversation between humanity and the stars? The hook strikes. Radio astronomers tried to dismiss the idea at first. They spoke of plasma instabilities, of resonance within the coma, of unknown physics. But even as they explained, their voices faltered. A random instability does not tick like a clock. Plasma does not choose a period of 43 seconds and keep it with unwavering discipline. The comparison became inevitable. A beacon. Here lies the conflict. If the rhythm is communication, what does it say? 3 short, 1 long, 3 short again. Some likened it to distress calls, the simplest pattern any intelligence might recognize. Others said it echoed the patterns of biological pulses, a kind of cosmic heartbeat. Still others warned against anthropomorphism, reminding us that meaning might exist beyond our frameworks entirely. The danger of interpretation is that it always reflects the interpreter. Amid the debate, artists and writers seized the rhythm. Music was composed to its beat. Poems wove the numbers into verses. Social media turned 43 seconds into a countdown meme. Each pulse celebrated, feared, or mocked. The signal left the domain of scientists and became part of human culture embedded in thought and imagination. And here comes the mini-climax. In one tense session, a panel of researchers played the recorded rhythm aloud for a gathered audience. The room filled with pulses of light and sound, steady, unyielding, ancient. For many present, the effect was overwhelming. Some wept. Some sat in silence, unable to move. It was not just data anymore. It was presence. For the first time, people felt as though the universe was knocking. This thought unsettles because it removes the luxury of distance. A comet we can study, a rhythm we must answer. To hear a beat is to feel compelled to reply, even if we do not know the language. And what reply could humanity give, so small and fragile, to something vast enough to cross interstellar gulfs? And yet, there is awe, too. To live in a moment when the cosmos may be speaking is to live at the edge of history. For generations, silence defined our place among the stars. Now, silence has been broken. Whether Atlas is a messenger, a machine, or something beyond life itself, its rhythm has already rewritten our story. The question that lingers is not just what the signal means, but whether it was ever meant for us at all. Perhaps Atlas is speaking to Mars, to the sun, to forces we cannot imagine. Or perhaps, in its unwavering pulse, it has already acknowledged us, daring us to decide whether to answer back. The rhythm of Atlas spread beyond science, beyond culture, and into the raw center of human identity. It became impossible to remain neutral. To some, it was a threat, the first note in a song of conquest. To others, it was hope, the long-awaited sign that we were not adrift in solitude. And so the world divided not along borders, but along belief. The hook strikes. Military analysts warned that if Atlas was technology, then it might carry purpose, and purpose could mean danger. In war rooms across the globe, simulations were drafted of what an interstellar probe might do if hostile. Entire fleets were put on higher alert, satellites recalibrated, defense systems tested. The unknown was treated as enemy, because to imagine otherwise felt reckless. Here lies the conflict. Just as strongly, voices rose in defiance of fear. Philosophers and faith leaders spoke of Atlas as a cosmic guest, a reminder that the universe is not empty, that we are part of a greater community. If it wanted to destroy us, one theologian said, it would not drift slowly past Mars, pulsing like a heartbeat. It would not come with rhythm, but with silence and suddenness. It has arrived not as a weapon, but as a witness. Between these poles, humanity twisted. News cycles fanned the division, showing generals warning of alien fleets alongside poets reading verses about cosmic kinship. In living rooms, families argued. Online, strangers fought. The signal itself was simple. What it meant to us was not. And here comes the mini-climax. A dramatic turn came when a coalition of scientists released a global statement. We must resist both hysteria and reverence, it read. Atlas is data, not deity. It is anomaly, not apocalypse. Until we know more, we must see it as question, not answer. But the appeal fell flat. Humanity does not live by data alone. We live by stories, and Atlas had become the most powerful story of all. This thought unsettles because it shows that the object's greatest impact may not be on Mars or in orbit, but within us. Atlas has forced humanity to reveal itself. Our fears of invasion, our hunger for connection, our inability to stand in the unknown without painting it in the colors of our imagination. And yet, there is awe too, for in this division lies proof of Atlas's power. It has already changed us without lifting a hand, without firing a signal beyond its rhythm. It has fractured and inspired, terrified and uplifted all at once. No comet, no asteroid, no planet has ever carried such weight. Atlas does not need to touch Earth to alter its destiny. It has already begun. And the true measure of its presence may not be what it is, but what it makes us reveal about ourselves. Whether we are creatures of fear, creatures of hope, or something trembling, uncertain, and utterly human in between. As Atlas swept past the orbit of Mars, the red planet became its backdrop. For the first time, humanity could see the object in detail not as a smear of light, but as a presence, vast, luminous, strange. Orbiters circling Mars captured images sharper than anything Earth-based telescopes could provide, and what they revealed left even the most cautious voices shaken. The hook strikes. Atlas no longer looked like a comet. Its coma, instead of chaotic haze, framed structures within. Photographs showed ridges aligned with uncanny precision, straight lines cutting through glowing plasma, arcs curving into near-perfect circles. Dust does not arrange itself with geometry. Ice does not sketch parallel tracks. Yet Atlas carried them openly, etched against the void. Here lies the conflict. Explanations faltered under scrutiny. Could light artifacts produce such shapes? Could overlapping streams of plasma mimic architecture? Simulations tried, but the lines refused to dissolve into noise. They held steady across multiple instruments, across hours and days. The closer Atlas drifted, the sharper they became, not fading, but clarifying. Public release of the images ignited a storm. To millions watching, the structures looked undeniable. Scaffolding, gridwork, veins of light crossing in deliberate symmetry. Scientists hesitated, their words trembling between denial and admission. Patterns of unknown origin, they wrote. But the world read only one thing: design. And here comes the mini-climax. One sequence from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter captured Atlas rotating slowly, and as it turned, a triangular shadow revealed itself at the heart of the glow. It held shape through multiple angles, crisp and steady, as though something solid lurked beneath the veil of plasma. It was no longer illusion, it was form. This thought unsettles because it corners the human mind. Once we see structure, we cannot return to chance. Once we glimpse shape, we cannot retreat into randomness. Atlas was not only glowing, it was showing, and what it showed pressed against the limits of language, not comet, not craft, but something between, something beyond. And yet, there is awe too. To watch geometry emerge in space is to confront the possibility that the universe does not distinguish between nature and artifice the way we do. What looks engineered may be organic. What looks alive may be constructed. Atlas forced humanity to abandon its categories, to admit that alien might mean not just other, but unimaginable. For the first time, Mars looked small, almost fragile, against the glow of this interstellar visitor. The red planet, so long the focus of human ambition, became a stage on which something far greater was revealing itself. And the images, grainy yet undeniable, carried a truth we could no longer ignore. Whatever Atlas is, it has come not only to pass through, but to be seen. Mars had always been a world of silence. Its skies, thin and pale, rarely offered spectacle beyond dust storms and faint glows of weak auroras. But when Atlas swept past, the red planet awakened. The atmosphere, tenuous as it was, began to flicker with light, and what unfolded across its skies made Earth's auroras look like candles compared to a storm. The hook strikes. Orbiters recorded the first flashes, ribbons of emerald and violet curling across the horizon, dancing above valleys and craters, long thought lifeless. Then came spirals, luminous coils twisting like galaxies drawn into the Martian sky. For minutes at a time, the planet's upper atmosphere shimmered as if painted by an unseen hand. Here lies the conflict. Auroras on Mars are not new, but they are rare, weak, and patchy, born of solar storms brushing its thin magnetosphere. These, however, were different. They were synchronized with Atlas's pulses, flaring at the same 43-second rhythm recorded across the cosmos. It was not Mars responding to the Sun. It was Mars answering Atlas. Scientists tried to model the events. They spoke of charged particles funneled by invisible magnetic fields, of resonances extending beyond known physics. But the rhythm betrayed them. The auroras came not in chaos, but in order, each burst timed to the steady pulse of the interstellar visitor. The data resisted dismissal. It was not just light, it was response. And here comes the mini-climax. Perseverance's cameras caught a sequence that stunned the world. Over Jezero Crater, the sky erupted in concentric rings of light, rippling outward in harmony with Atlas's glow. To watch the footage was to see the planet itself beating in time with a cosmic heart. A dead world had become a drum struck by something alien moving silently through the void. This thought unsettles because it dissolves the illusion of separation. Mars has no voice, no weather rich enough to create such patterns. Yet under Atlas's influence, it sings in light. The boundary between lifeless rock and living system blurs, leaving humanity to ask whether Atlas animates the worlds it passes or merely reveals something always waiting beneath the surface. And yet, there is awe, too. To stand in imagination on the Martian soil and watch the sky bloom with alien rhythm is to glimpse the scale of the universe's artistry. For billions of years, Mars has slumbered in silence. Now, under the gaze of an interstellar traveler, it becomes canvas and instrument, part of a performance that stretches beyond human comprehension. Atlas had not touched Mars, and yet it had written across its sky, leaving trails of light that whispered of presence, of power, of possibility. A barren world had become a stage, and in its glow we learn that silence is not absence. It is potential, waiting for the moment the universe decides to speak. The more Atlas revealed of itself, the less it could be called a comet. Each new dataset eroded the boundaries of definition until the language itself seemed inadequate. And with inadequacy came speculation. Quiet at first, then louder, then impossible to ignore. What if Atlas was not simply passing through, but testing? The hook strikes. Scientists reviewing the Martian auroras noted something strange. The pulses were not random flashes, nor were they uniform. Each sequence differed slightly, as though adjusted after every interaction. One burst would flare stronger, the next weaker, then the next shifted in spectrum, as if the planet were being probed, its responses measured, its atmosphere mapped by light. Here lies the conflict. The natural explanation was resonance, Atlas interacting with the solar wind in ways not fully understood. But this explanation faltered when compared with the timing. The pulses adapted, changing with conditions on Mars almost as though Atlas were listening, experimenting, altering its rhythm to draw out new reactions. That behavior belonged not to stone or ice, but to method. The idea spread among theorists. Atlas was not inert. It was active, not destructive, not yet, but inquisitive. The auroras, the tremors, the pulses, these were not accidents. They were tests, experiments conducted on a planetary scale. And if Mars was being tested, what of Earth? And here comes the mini-climax. A leaked transcript from a closed-door scientific advisory meeting sent waves of unease across the world. "We cannot exclude the possibility," it read, "that 3I Atlas is performing directed environmental assessments of solar system bodies." The phrasing was clinical, but its implication shook even the most rational voices. Mars might have just become a laboratory under the gaze of something interstellar. This thought unsettles because it reframes our role. We are not observers of Atlas. We are subjects of its observation. The telescope turns inward. The experimenter is no longer human. It is something vast, something that has traveled through gulfs of time and space, now watching our system as if it were an exhibit. And yet, there is awe too. For if Atlas is testing, then it is not indifferent. It engages, it seeks, it measures. That alone speaks of intention, and intention speaks of presence. In a universe we long assumed was silent, the possibility that we are being studied is both terrifying and extraordinary. Mars flickers with auroras, not for beauty, but for data. Its surface trembles not from chance, but from inquiry. The red planet, lifeless for eons, has become a page in a notebook written by something older than humanity. And whether that notebook spells danger or discovery, one truth remains. Atlas is not here to pass unseen. It is here to look back. The leaked transcript spread like a wildfire. Newspapers ran headlines about alien assessments. Commentators argued over implications, and ordinary people looked skyward with unease. It was one thing to imagine a distant object passing through the solar system. It was another to think of it as aware, deliberate, probing. For the first time in history, humanity felt observed. The hook strikes. Panic was immediate. Stock markets wavered, governments issued calm statements that convinced no one, and conspiracy theories flourished. Some claimed Atlas had already scanned Earth and judged it unworthy. Others warned of impending invasion, counting down the days until the comet's trajectory carried it past our orbit. Fear thrives in uncertainty, and Atlas was nothing if not uncertain. Here lies the conflict. Alongside fear, another current surged, hope. Faith leaders spoke of Atlas as divine witness, a cosmic presence sent not to harm, but to guide. Philosophers wrote of a universe finally revealing its voice. Children drew pictures of glowing visitors. In online forums, people gathered not to panic, but to share awe, speaking of how humbling it was to feel seen by something greater. The divide sharpened with each new image, each new pulse recorded. Scientists begged for restraint, reminding the public that data does not equate to intention. But intention was exactly what people felt. The rhythm of Atlas was no longer just numbers in observatories. It was in music, in art, in conversations whispered late at night. It had seeped into the human psyche, reshaping our collective imagination. And here comes the mini-climax. A viral broadcast captured the moment perfectly. A journalist, standing beneath a clear night sky, spoke as the comet's glow shimmered faintly overhead. "For the first time," she said, her voice trembling, "we are not only watching the universe, we are being watched." The clip spread across the globe within hours, quoted in headlines etched into memory. This thought unsettles because it erodes the last sanctuary of privacy. For millennia, Humanity has stared into the heavens, assuming it was a one-way mirror. Now, the mirror looks back. We are not hidden the corner of the galaxy, unnoticed and untouched. We are on display under the gaze of something that does not explain itself. And yet, there is awe too. To be observed is to matter. The fear of judgment is matched by the thrill of recognition. If Atlas sees us, then we are no longer alone in the cold theater of space. We are part of a larger audience, perhaps even a larger story. On Earth, the sky has become heavier. Every flicker of Atlas carries not just light, but meaning, reshaping how we see ourselves. For better or worse, the age of solitude has ended, and humanity has awakened to the truth that the universe not only holds us, but notices us. Trajectory has always been the anchor of understanding. Comets move in predictable arcs, obeying gravity and momentum, their courses calculable years in advance. But Atlas defied this rule too. As it swept past Mars, something strange began to happen. It slowed, not enough to seem impossible, but enough to raise every eyebrow in every observatory watching. The hook strikes. Data from multiple sources confirmed the anomaly. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory noted a reduction in velocity inconsistent with known forces. The European Southern Observatory observed the same. Atlas was bleeding speed, not through drag, not through sublimation, but in a way that suggested decision. To the human eye, it was subtle, a pause, a hesitation. But in orbital mechanics, hesitation is intention. Here lies the conflict. Gravity alone could not explain the behavior. Mars had tugged on countless comets before, each time accelerating them as they passed. Atlas should have surged forward. Instead, it lingered. Scientists scrambled to explain. Perhaps mass loss had altered its inertia. Perhaps unknown jets of gas were firing in unseen directions. But the patterns did not match. Atlas slowed evenly, deliberately, as though considering the planet it now loomed above. Theories grew wilder. Was Atlas maneuvering, adjusting its path as a spacecraft would? Was it surveying Mars, collecting data before moving on? Some dared to whisper the most unsettling thought. Was it waiting? Waiting for alignment. Waiting for Earth to turn its gaze more fully upon it. Waiting for the next phase in a process we had not yet understood. And here comes the mini-climax. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter captured footage of Atlas's glow stretching and contracting as though the object itself were breathing in the void. Against the backdrop of the red planet, the image was haunting. A luminous form lingering vast and strange, refusing to rush its passage. It looked less like a comet in transit and more like a visitor pausing at a threshold. This thought unsettles because it undermines the last refuge of denial. Natural bodies do not pause. They do not hesitate. They do not decide. To slow is to choose, and to choose is to act. If Atlas is acting, then humanity is not studying a comet. Humanity is witnessing behavior. And yet, there is awe too. For to imagine Atlas lingering above Mars is to see a scene written in myth. The silent traveler gazing down upon a planet long dead, stirring its skies with light, and holding its place in the heavens as though weighing the next step. Whether machine, organism, or something beyond both, Atlas had crossed from object to presence. Mars, in its silence, had drawn the gaze of the interstellar visitor. And in that moment, the solar system itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what the stranger would decide. When Atlas slowed above Mars, the question shifted. It was no longer about whether it was natural or engineered comet or craft. the new question cut deeper. What exactly was it searching for? The hook strikes. A growing number of scientists began to suggest the unthinkable, that Atlas was not merely observing planetary atmospheres or testing magnetic fields. It might be searching for signatures of life. The pulses aligned too perfectly with auroras, with tremors, with every possible indicator of environmental response. Mars, lifeless though it may be, was the test bed. Earth, vibrant and fragile, might be the true target. Here lies the conflict. If Atlas sought life, then every signal, every pause, every shimmer carried weight beyond measure. Its hesitation above Mars could mean disappointment, a barren world offering no answers. But if so, the logic was chilling. The next step, inevitably, would be Earth, and Earth is anything but barren. The debate fractured into fever. Some argued that Atlas was a probe programmed to map biospheres across the stars. Its presence was neutral, even benevolent, part of some vast interstellar archive cataloging where life takes hold. Others warned of darker purpose, that such scouting was the first step in conquest, that life is measured not to admire, but to control. And here comes the mini-climax. One image from MAVEN seemed to deepen the mystery. As Atlas loomed, the orbiter recorded ultraviolet emissions reflecting off its coma in spectral bands associated not with rock or ice, but with organic molecules. The data was ambiguous, but to those willing to believe, it looked like a question being asked. Is there life here? This thought unsettles because it flips the roles. For centuries, humanity has been the one scanning skies, sending probes, searching for biosignatures on distant planets. Now the gaze had turned inward. We had become the subject of the very methods we once used. To feel studied is to feel small and vulnerable. And yet there is awe, too. If Atlas is seeking life, then its journey speaks of recognition, not hostility. Life is rare, fragile, miraculous. Perhaps it drifts not to conquer, but to witness, to confirm that in this corner of the galaxy, a spark has taken hold. And perhaps that recognition, even if silent, is the closest thing to first contact we will ever know. The glow above Mars may already be looking past it, toward the blue planet waiting beyond. Earth, abundant with oceans and forests, cities and voices, may be the next page in whatever ledger Atlas carries across the stars. And whether that page is read with reverence or calculation, the fact remains. We are no longer the ones searching. We are the ones being found. As the world braced for Atlas's approach, a quieter voice began to rise from within the scientific community. It did not deny the strangeness, nor the patterns, nor the unsettling precision of its movements. But it asked a different question. What if none of this was about us at all? The hook strikes. Human history has always placed Earth at the center, first in myth, then in science, then in imagination. Every comet was a message, every eclipse an omen, every star a story written for us. But perhaps Atlas was not looking at us, not choosing us, not even aware of us. Perhaps it was moving along a path that had nothing to do with humanity, and we, in our endless hunger for meaning, had mistaken its indifference for intention. Here lies the conflict. If Atlas is a probe, then maybe it catalogs, measures, records, not for us, not against us, but simply because that is what it does. Mars may have been studied not to prepare for conquest, but because it lay on the way. Earth may be next, not as a target, but as another entry in a ledger older than history. To imagine this is both comfort and humiliation. Comfort, because it means no malice, humiliation because it means no specialness. The debate sharpened. Fear insisted that no intelligence drifts through the solar system by accident. Hope clung to the idea of invitation, of contact. But the quieter voice repeated, what if Atlas is not hostile, not benevolent, but simply indifferent? A machine without concern, an organism without malice, a presence too vast to notice us any more than we notice ants beneath our feet. And here comes the mini-climax. In one conference, a scientist posed a haunting image. When we launch probes toward other planets, she said, we do not do it to speak with them. We do it to study them, to collect samples, to record, to learn. What if Atlas is doing the same? And what if, in its scale, we are not the subjects, but the specimens? The silence that followed was heavier than fear. This thought unsettles because it denies us the central role we crave. We want to be chosen, judged, spoken to. We want Atlas to mean something about us. But if it does not, if it is simply acting out its purpose without thought of us, then the most alien truth may be this: the universe is not about humanity at all. And yet, there is awe too. For even if Atlas is indifferent, we are still part of its path. We are still recorded, still measured, still touched by something older and stranger than our imagination can bear. To be a footnote in a cosmic archive is still to belong to the cosmos. Atlas drifts closer, patient, pulsing, vast. Whether it comes as judge, guest, or indifferent traveler, it forces us to see ourselves differently. And perhaps that is the truest impact. Not what Atlas means, but what Atlas makes us realize, that the story of the universe is not ours alone, and never has been. Humanity has always looked to the skies for meaning. Long before telescopes, before satellites, the heavens were not empty space. They were scripture, canvas, prophecy. Every culture read them differently, but all shared the same impulse, the belief that what moved above us spoke to what happened below. The hook strikes. In ancient Babylon, priests recorded comets as omens of kings rising and falling. In China, astronomers tracked guest stars with meticulous detail, believing they signaled shifts in the mandate of heaven. Medieval Europe painted fiery streaks across manuscripts as warnings of plague or war. To look up was never neutral. The sky was never mute. Here lies the conflict. Science has since stripped the heavens of prophecy, replacing omen with orbit, mystery with mechanics. Yet Atlas has reopened a door we thought closed forever. Its rhythms, its geometry, its hesitation above Mars, all remind us of those older fears and older hopes. We may call ourselves modern, but our reaction is as ancient as the first hunter staring upward, heart pounding at the sight of a strange light. Across the world, parallels are drawn. Scholars note how Atlas echoes the Halley apparition of 1066, woven into the Bayeux Tapestry as a herald of conquest. Others point to the Panic of 1910, when people feared Halley's tale carried poison gas. Today, though our instruments are sharper, our fears are no less vivid. The words have changed, but the pulse is the same. The sky is speaking, and we do not know how to answer. And here comes the mini-climax. In one gathering of historians and astronomers, a chilling observation was made. Every civilization that saw meaning in the sky believed the message was about them, one speaker said, and every time they were wrong. The stars moved on indifferent. But now, with Atlas, we face the terrifying possibility that, for the first time, we may not be wrong. The room fell silent. This thought unsettles because it collapses history into the present. We are not so different from those who once prayed beneath comets or carved their shapes into stone. Atlas has torn away the illusion of progress, showing us that no matter how advanced we become, we are still humans beneath the night sky, afraid, hopeful, desperate for meaning. And yet, there is awe too, for perhaps that longing is not weakness, but essence. To stand beneath the stars and wonder is the oldest act of humanity. Atlas, in all its strangeness, has reminded us of who we are. Storytellers, interpreters, seekers. The comet is alien, but the response is timeless. Civilizations rise and fall, but the gaze upward remains the same. Now, as Atlas glows above Mars, we continue that lineage. We too inscribe it into our stories, as surely as the Babylonians and the Chinese and the medieval scribes once did. The difference is only this: their signs passed into legend. Ours unfolds in real time. While the world's attention remained fixed on Mars, Earth itself began to stir with anomalies that no one could ignore. It was as if the rhythms of Atlas had crossed the gulf of space and found resonance here in our skies, our fields, our instruments. For the first time, the visitor's presence was no longer distant. It was here. The hook strikes, magnetometers across the globe recorded faint pulses 43 seconds apart. The same rhythm logged by Mars orbiters. At first, the data was dismissed as coincidence, interference from solar storms. But the pulses continued, steady, synchronized with Atlas's glow. Stations in Alaska, Siberia, and Antarctica all confirmed the same heartbeat echoing through Earth's magnetic field. Here lies the conflict. Natural explanations fell apart quickly. Solar activity cannot lock into such perfect timing across multiple instruments. Seismic monitors, tuned to detect earthquakes, began to register faint vibrations that aligned with the pulses as well. They were too weak to be felt by humans, but too regular to dismiss. It was as though the very crust of the Earth was shivering in answer to a distant call. Astronomers were cautious, but the public was not. Headlines screamed of Earth responding to Atlas. Social networks lit up with clips of scientists trying to explain away the impossible. Each failed attempt only deepened the sense of inevitability. The visitor was no longer content with Mars. It had reached us already, and here comes the mini-climax. In a dramatic turn, auroras erupted far from their usual latitudes. Curtains of light appeared over southern Europe, South America, and even parts of Africa, regions untouched by auroras for centuries. Their timing? Exact to the pulse. 43 seconds. Flicker. Silence. Flicker. The skies themselves had joined the rhythm. This thought unsettles because it strips away distance. We cannot comfort ourselves with the idea of watching from afar, safe on Earth, while Mars bears the brunt. The rhythm now courses through our own skies, through our own ground. Atlas does not need to arrive to touch us. It has already extended its reach. And yet, there is awe too. To see Earth's skies glow in unison with a visitor from beyond is to glimpse a unity we never imagined. For a moment, continents separated by oceans shared the same pulse of light. Billions stood beneath the same sky, watching the same rhythm, connected not by borders, but by the beat of something greater. The question is no longer whether Atlas notices us. The question is what it seeks. For the rhythm is not chaos. It is not chance. It is deliberate. And now, for the first time, Earth itself has become part of its song. As Earth trembled faintly in time with Atlas, the question deepened. It was no longer simply about observation. Observation could explain scans, rhythms, even probes of magnetic fields. But what if Atlas's presence was not passive at all? What if it carried power not only to record life, but to stir it? The hook strikes. Biologists joined the debate with unease. In several laboratories monitoring microbial colonies and space-based experiments, irregularities were reported. Growth cycles shifted subtly. Replication rates increased. In some cases, dormant spores awakened sooner than expected. All of it began after Atlas reached Mars's orbit. None of it could be explained by local conditions alone. Here lies the conflict. Scientists warned of correlation, not causation. The data was fragmentary, fragile, subject to error. But whispers spread. Was Atlas sending more than light? Was its rhythm not only signal, but influence? The thought was unsettling, because it implied agency. Not a comet watching from afar, but a presence reaching across the gulf, touching the building blocks of life. Theories multiplied. Some suggested that Atlas emitted radiation tuned not to destroy but to energize, a catalyst for dormant systems. Others speculated that its rhythm carried resonance frequencies capable of altering molecular bonds, nudging complexity into motion. To skeptics, this was fantasy. To believers, it was revelation. Life in the universe might not be spontaneous. It might be seeded, awakened, cultivated by visitors like this one. And here comes the mini-climax. A leaked observation from an Antarctic research station electrified the discussion. In sealed ice samples, long frozen microbial traces exhibited unexpected activity. The timing? Within hours of Earth's magnetometers recording the first global Atlas pulses. For some, this was coincidence. For others, it was proof. Atlas was not only searching, it was stirring. This thought unsettles because it reshapes the origin story of life itself. If Atlas can awaken microbes today, could it have done so billions of years ago? Could Earth's own spark of life have been lit by a traveler like this one, drifting through, leaving rhythm and energy in its wake? The idea that we are not only observed but engineered cuts to the root of identity. And yet, there is awe too. To imagine life as part of a greater cycle, sparked, guided, awakened by hands unseen, is to feel less alone, not more. We become chapters in a cosmic continuum, threads in a tapestry far older than our world. Atlas, in this light, is not a threat, but a reminder that life does not begin in isolation, and it may not end in isolation either. The Earth now flickers in Atlas's rhythm, its microbes stir, its skies glow. Whether coincidence, influence, or purpose, one truth holds steady. Something more than observation is at work. Atlas does not just watch, it acts. For weeks, humanity had watched, measured, and speculated, but now the conversation shifted in a direction that no one could avoid forever. If Atlas was speaking, in pulses and rhythms in silent light, should we answer? The hook strikes. The ideas spread like wildfire. Some insisted that silence was safety. To reveal ourselves would be reckless, inviting dangers beyond comprehension. Others argued the opposite, that silence was cowardice, that if Atlas was searching, to ignore it was to waste the most profound opportunity in history. The debate was no longer confined to scientists. It spilled into politics, culture, and the streets. Here lies the conflict. Around the world, petitions emerged demanding that humanity send a deliberate reply. Amateur radio groups fantasized about transmitting signals toward Atlas. Academics drafted carefully designed pulses encoded with mathematical constants, the universal language. Meanwhile, Military leaders warned that any transmission would expose us, making Earth a target in a game whose rules we did not understand. Silence was caution. Speech was risk. Agencies convened emergency panels. At the United Nations, a closed meeting debated the possibility of constructing a global message. Could humanity even agree on what to say? Should it be a welcome, a warning, or simply proof of our existence? Philosophers urged humility, warning against arrogance in presuming Atlas sought dialogue. Religious leaders counseled reverence. If it has chosen to speak, it has already said more than we can ever answer. And here comes the mini-climax. Leaked documents revealed that several observatories had quietly begun experiments. Using powerful lasers, they sent test pulses toward Atlas, mimicking its 43-second rhythm. The signals were faint, symbolic, more than real. Yet the fact alone shook the public. Humanity had already begun to answer quietly, without consensus. And whether Atlas received the reply or not, the act itself marked a threshold. This thought unsettles because it forces a reckoning with our nature. We cannot resist answering. It is what we do, to respond, to speak, to reach back when we feel seen. But in this case, the stakes are cosmic. To answer may be to invite recognition, and recognition, once given, cannot be undone. And yet, there is awe too. The possibility of dialogue, however faint, carries a weight unlike anything before. For the first time, the cosmos does not feel like an empty backdrop, but a stage, and humanity stands upon it, trembling, daring to speak into the dark. Atlas is no longer only a mystery in the sky. It is a question, and our reply will define us as much as the signal itself. Across the world, telescopes turn upward, radios hum with possibility, and billions wait in silence, wondering if Atlas is listening, then what will it hear when Earth finally finds the courage or the recklessness to speak? At first, nothing happened. The faint laser pulses, barely strong enough to register against the vast glow of Atlas, seemed to vanish into silence. Scientists reassured the public the signals were symbolic gestures, nothing more, like whispering into a hurricane. But then, within days, the rhythm changed. The hook strikes. For months, Atlas had pulsed at near-perfect intervals of 43 seconds. It was steady, relentless, predictable. Now, the pattern shifted. Instruments picked up deviations, a doubling of the pulse, a pause, then a resumption in a new cadence. To those watching closely, it looked like an answer. To those terrified, it looked like acknowledgement. Here lies the conflict. Naturalists scrambled to explain. Could the change have been coincidence? A fluctuation in plasma emissions? The natural instability of a vast energetic body? Simulations failed. The timing was too exact, the shift too sudden, the correlation too strong. The moment Earth had sent a signal, Atlas altered its voice. To believe it was random was to ignore the evidence of intention. Debate exploded. Some hailed it as first contact, proof that humanity's whisper had been heard. Others panicked, insisting we had crossed a line we could never uncross. We have announced ourselves to something we do not understand, one critic said, and now it has turned its gaze. Governments denied involvement, even as leaked reports suggested they were preparing for scenarios that had never been written into policy. And here comes the mini-climax. Observatories in Hawaii and Chile captured a spectacle no one could explain. Atlas's glow intensified, stretching into narrow beams that flickered outward, not randomly, but toward Earth's general direction. They were faint, distant, impossible to interpret. Yet their alignment was unmistakable. It was as if the interstellar visitor had finally looked back. This thought unsettles because it collapses the safety of distance. As long as Atlas pulsed to itself, we could pretend it was indifferent. But now its rhythm had changed, its light had shifted, and every instinct told us the same story. It had noticed. Humanity was no longer just a watcher, we were seen. And yet, there is awe too. To be acknowledged, even ambiguously, is to be pulled into a relationship with the cosmos. Atlas had crossed from phenomenon into dialogue, from mystery into encounter. The silence of the universe, which had weighed upon us for centuries, had cracked open just enough to let possibility through. Telescopes still stare, instruments still hum, but the night sky feels heavier now. The faint glow of Atlas is no longer just light. It is attention, and the unspoken question presses harder than ever. If we have been noticed, then what comes next? The shift in Atlas's rhythm reverberated across the world. To many, it was communication, a cosmic hello, the first reply to humanity's cautious whisper. But others argued something more unsettling, that what we had seen was not dialogue at all, but experiment. The hook strikes. In a closed meeting, astrophysicists compared the change in cadence to a stimulus response test. Earth had offered a signal, and Atlas had altered its pulse. That did not necessarily mean conversation. It might simply mean observation, a probe recording how we would react if it changed its behavior. In that interpretation, humanity was not engaged in dialogue. Humanity was being studied. Here lies the conflict. Optimists clung to the dream of contact. They pointed to the timing, the symmetry, the beams of light directed toward Earth as evidence of intention to connect. But skeptics countered, "We are not talking to it. It is running an experiment on us. We are the data." The idea spread quickly, igniting a new wave of unease. If Atlas could manipulate its signals to provoke a response, then what we saw was not friendliness, but calibration. Evidence for the darker interpretation grew. Each new deviation in rhythm was followed by spikes in Earth's magnetic field, as if Atlas were testing not just our attention, but our environment. Seismographs, too, recorded faint echoes synchronized with its altered pulses. The entire planet seemed caught in an experiment we had not agreed to join. And here comes the mini-climax. A leaked document from the European Space Agency crystallized the dread. Behavior consistent with controlled variability, it read. Atlas appears to be probing system response. The language was clinical, but its weight was crushing. To the public, it translated simply, "We are the subjects of a test, and the tester is not human." This thought unsettles because it strips away comfort. Communication implies mutuality, a bridge between equals. But experiment implies hierarchy, observer and observed, experimenter and specimen. Humanity, so proud of studying stars and cells alike, now found itself in the role of specimen, and the laboratory was Earth itself. And yet, there is awe, too. To be studied at all is to be recognized as worth the effort. Perhaps Atlas tests because we are alive, because we are complex, because in the vast silence of space we represent something rare. That recognition, even as specimen, is still connection of a kind. Still, the glow in the sky feels different now. Each flicker may not be greeting, but measurement. Each pulse, not hello, but adjustment. Atlas has noticed us, yes, but not as neighbors, as subjects. And the test, whatever it is, has only just begun. At first, the anomalies were subtle, Easy to dismiss, easy to ignore. A flicker in satellite communications, a brief outage in long-distance radio, a spike in GPS errors. But then patterns began to emerge, and those patterns aligned with something humanity could no longer deny. Atlas's new rhythm. The hook strikes. Global monitoring stations confirmed that disruptions occurred in intervals eerily close to the altered cadence of Atlas's pulses. 43 seconds had once been steady. Now, with the new variability, outages followed its shifts. Aircraft reported navigation glitches at the same moments observatories recorded spectral deviations in Atlas's light. The correlation was too sharp, too consistent. Here lies the conflict. Official explanations spoke of solar activity, atmospheric interference, random failures. But engineers knew better. Solar storms had signatures. Random glitches had patterns of chaos. What was happening followed order, and order suggested intent. The same pulse that shimmered through Earth's magnetosphere was now bleeding into the infrastructure of human civilization. The public reaction split again. Some saw it as confirmation of hostility. Atlas testing our defenses, probing the fragility of our networks. Others saw it as proof of curiosity, a visitor tugging gently at our threads, not to destroy, but to see how we were woven. Neither interpretation eased the unease. When technology falters, fear rises. And here comes the mini-climax. One incident in particular left the world shaken. During a live international broadcast tracking Atlas, satellites carrying the feed went dark mid-transmission. For 90 seconds, the signal was gone. When it returned, observatories confirmed that the blackout coincided perfectly with Atlas's brightest pulse yet, directed faintly toward Earth. Billions of people experienced silence at the same instant, a void as though the visitor had reached through and touched the flow of information itself. This thought unsettles because it strips away distance once more. Atlas is no longer a faraway light observed by specialists. It is a force that can bend the systems we rely on daily: navigation, communication, the invisible web binding civilization together. The comet had become present not only in the sky, but in the pulse of our technology. And yet, there is awe, too. To imagine that something drifting from interstellar space can interact with the fragile lattice of satellites and signals we have built is to feel both fragile and immense. Fragile because it shows how easily we could be silenced. Immense because it reveals that our reach, our radio waves, our networks, is visible enough to stir response from the cosmos. Each glitch, each flicker, each silence carries more weight now. They are not malfunctions. They are conversations written in absence, in interruptions, in rhythms of power beyond our control. Atlas is no longer only testing planets. It is pressing against us directly, and the question becomes unavoidable. Are we ready for the weight of its touch? As systems faltered and satellites blinked into silence, the fear of attack gripped the world. But another interpretation began to rise, whispered first, then published, then debated openly. What if these disruptions were not hostile at all, but deliberate? Not weapons, but words. The hook strikes. Cryptographers and mathematicians noticed something strange. The outages were not random in length. They followed ratios, sequences echoing prime numbers, harmonic intervals, mathematical constants. To the untrained eye, they were chaos. To those who looked deeper, they seemed to carry structure, and structure implied message. Here lies the conflict. Could interference itself be language? For centuries, humans had imagined alien greetings in lights or radio bursts. But what if the message arrived instead in silence, in interruption, in the sudden void where connection should be? Every blackout, every glitch became a possible syllable in an alphabet we did not yet understand. The race to decode began. Teams across the globe aligned outage patterns with Atlas's pulses, trying to map disruption into code. Some claimed early success, pointing to repeating structures that could be interpreted as signals of acknowledgement. Others dismissed it as coincidence, accusing enthusiasts of forcing patterns into noise. The debate mirrored humanity itself, hungry for meaning, terrified of what that meaning might be. And here comes the mini-climax. One revelation struck hardest. A team in Japan aligned outage intervals with the binary system. The result spelled a repeating sequence, not words, not sentences, but the unmistakable structure of a count. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 1, 2, 3. The simplest form of proof that something was not only acting but communicating. Humanity was no longer alone in speaking. This thought unsettles because it demands responsibility. To recognize language is to admit we are in conversation, whether we wish to be or not. And conversations are never neutral. If Atlas is speaking, then Earth must decide how or if to answer. Silence may no longer protect us. Reply may no longer be optional. And yet, there is awe, too. The possibility that a visitor from interstellar space has reached across distance, not with destruction, but with rhythm and mathematics, is to feel the universe stretch closer. The silence between stars is thinner now, breached by pulses and pauses that carry intention. Satellites still blink, signals still falter, outages still ripple across the grid. But what once felt like failure now feels like dialogue, written in absence, spoken in interference. Atlas has chosen its medium, and Earth must learn to listen. Before the next message arrives, heavier, clearer, impossible to ignore. The patterns grew sharper, the silences deeper. What began as faint glitches in the machinery of Earth had become unmistakable, a dialogue written in outages and pulses in the trembling fabric of our technology. Humanity, for the first time in its history, stood at the threshold of an answer it could not postpone. The hook strikes. Atlas's rhythm shifted again, not erratic, not chaotic, but accelerating. The pulses that had once come every 43 seconds now arrived faster, closer, as if time itself were compressing. Observatories compared the change to a crescendo, the final measures of a composition building toward climax. If Atlas had been speaking, it was no longer whispering. It was raising its voice. Here lies the conflict. Scientists begged for caution, warning that humanity lacked the tools to understand what it was receiving. Politicians debated endlessly. Should we respond with power, with humility, or with silence? Religious leaders declared the moment prophetic, a dividing line in human history. Meanwhile, billions of ordinary people did the only thing they could. They watched the sky, waiting for the visitor's next move. And here comes the mini-climax, a night unlike any other. Across continents, skies flared with auroras in impossible colors, synchronized to the accelerating beat. Red and green, violet and silver, curtains of light draped the earth, shimmering not with chaos, but with order. In those luminous veils, some claimed to see patterns, glyphs, even symbols, as if the very sky had become a page on which Atlas was writing. Cameras struggled to capture it, but to those who stood beneath the spectacle, the message was clear. something was about to happen. This thought unsettles because it leaves no retreat. We are no longer debating what Atlas is or whether it notices us. We are standing inside its experiment, its observation, its song. The next pulse may not simply test, it may reveal. And revelation, once given, cannot be undone. And yet, there is awe too. To live in this moment is to see humanity lifted out of its isolation, cast onto the stage of the cosmos. Whatever Atlas is, comet, construct, or something beyond our categories, it has chosen to leave silence behind. Its presence has already reshaped us, forcing us to see ourselves as subjects, as participants, as part of a story older and larger than Earth itself. Now, as the rhythm climbs toward its crescendo, the question presses harder than ever. When Atlas delivers its next act, will it be message, judgment, or simply continuation of a process we cannot yet fathom? The skies above shimmer, the earth below trembles, and the universe itself feels as though it is holding its breath. Atlas has spoken in pulses, in silence, in light. The next word is coming, and when it arrives, humanity will no longer be who it was before.